The world won't understand you. Hey, but it's okay. Said the world won't understand you, 'cause I made you in my own way. Said the world won't understand you.
Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to episode 22, part 2 of InAGoodWay podcast. Today, we have Debbie Gleason once again. In episode 21, we talked about mental health. But we did more like, I guess, for everyone to be able to relate. This one's going to deal more with spiritual aspects of mental health. So if it's too heavy, you could watch, feel free to watch, but if it's too heavy, then I would recommend, watch part 1 instead, or both, either way. But this one, we're going to try to touch more on the spiritual aspects, right? So, some of you might still be able to relate to it, so, I'm not sure where to start. Thank you once again, Debbie, for being here. So I know, like in your line of work, obviously you're taught to deal more with the physical aspects, right? Mm-hmm. But like you said, you're aware of the spiritual. So I know, maybe you could share a personal, like what kind of spiritual things do you notice that are connected to mental health that you experience, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you mentioned that, because I think it was just a couple weeks ago, I was just reflecting to myself that mental health and spirituality, I feel like they walk this like fine line of like being on either side, but both could kind of dip in to the other. So like schizophrenia. Like to say somebody who's having visions or we call them hallucinations, right? But like, what if they are spiritual visions that we're not giving them credit for? Things like that. I don't know if you've had any encounters with people who are schizophrenic, but or have that diagnosis, I should say. I don't like to call people like something like you're schizophrenic. I like to say like you've been diagnosed with that, or that's your experience, or whatever. But for somebody who is experiencing a schizophrenic episode, they might be saying stuff, and if you really listen, some of it is actually like, oh wow, like this person's telling some truth here that we're not really always giving them that credit for. Like I said, they might say like, you always hear the stuff about government conspiracy, but that's not too far-fetched. It's just out of the norm that we're used to talking in everyday conversation.
Since you brought, I feel like we could do the whole episode on schizophrenia, because I've always believed that. It's always really made me upset to hear, oh, this person's schizophrenia, because it'd be like calling myself, like, I know for sure, and I did that on purpose, right? Like, so people knew, like, I'm not under any substances. I've been sober, like, not even drinking for like, I don't know, 8 years maybe, or something like that. So I have within, I don't know, I think I ate a gummy once, like one of those in the last maybe 3 years ago, or it's 2 years. I don't even know. But, but other than that, like, like I'm sober. So I know people that know me, that's the thing, is people that know me know when I'm saying something, like they know it's the truth, right? So when I've seen things and this and that, imagine if someone would have just said like, oh, you're schizophrenic, right? And so, I don't know to what level, like maybe, like you've dealt with people that it was just like, oh, wow, they're way out there. But exactly, like, because I know what was done, until 1978, Native people, when the medicine meant everything, like for practicing their spiritual beliefs, they will put them in the mental institutions, right? So that was like something horrible. So like nowadays, I think it almost seems like anyone that would say, oh, I have visions or this and that would just be labeled as schizophrenic. So like, how much of that do you encounter? Do you encounter a lot of people that are just diagnosed schizophrenic, and like, how do you deal with that?
I think, I'm really, like I said, I try to be really careful about it. So I'll like take a lot of notes about it and then kind of reflect on like, I mean, are these those symptoms, or is there something more spiritual happening? And it also just depends on the level of like awareness and consciousness that person has. So as you know, I mean, there's some people, I mean, even when we think about like Down syndrome or those or things where there's like cognitive impairment, there's different levels. There's people who can work at Walmart and have Down syndrome, and there's people who are bedbound because they have Down syndrome. So there's all these like, it's a spectrum. So some people who have the characteristics of schizophrenia might be able to function just like you or me. And so with those people, I might have a different conversation of like, do you have any spiritual beliefs? Do you have any, you know, what is your, do you have any religious background? What do you like? Do you believe in anything like the devil or ghosts or anything like that? And just kind of go from there. And maybe that kind of helps them piece something else differently for themselves. But if they're at a different level and they can't really comprehend that, or it's like too far from where they are, I don't even go that route. I just kind of talk about the symptoms or how they're functioning and how to try to get them to a level to, I guess, make it through the day, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it just, yeah, it opens up so much for me, because that's, like I said, it's always been, you know, you could almost say it's at some points it's even felt like a trigger to me, because just knowing, like, understanding spirituality
Oh yeah.
and all the experiences and people not understanding that, and just because someone doesn't understand, they have to put a label on it, because
I think there's also like that underlying fear of being labeled crazy, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like especially with spirituality. I mean, there's many times where like I hold back from saying something because I'm like, this group isn't going to get that. And like they might even question my sanity. So like, I'm just going to zip it. You know?
yeah, 100. I mean, I'm like, I think because thankfully I was around people enough that accepted it finally. Well, like when I was around like a native community that they may not understand everything you're experiencing, but they understand it. You know what I mean? Or at least the people that, like, to me, when I would talk to the elders, they understood. So to me, it was like, I don't care if this guy or that, you know, whoever doesn't understand it, like I would go straight and talk to the elders and they would understand it. So then that's all the confirmation I needed. Like I didn't need anybody else to be like, oh, okay, you're, you know, okay, you might be saying you might be this or that. But no, it was funny because I was just thinking, like, not too long ago, I saw that movie A Beautiful Mind, right? And you know, I always felt that, like, when I saw the movie, like, this guy was a genius, because, you know, there's this old saying, like, it's a thin line between genius and insanity, right?
Yeah.
But also it's like Tesla, no one will ever say he's crazy, but I think he used to say he would get all this information from somewhere, that it was being given to him. So I mean, by the label that they put, like the schizophrenia, like they would have labeled him schizophrenic. If he's saying, oh, I'm getting this, you know, whoever alien or whoever is giving me this information, that's basically what he was saying, right? I think he did say that pretty much. But anyways, that movie A Beautiful Mind, it's like, I guess he started seeing things, right? He started seeing things, and there was like these people he would see. But you know, he got all these prizes for, you know, I don't know what prizes, but he was like this. Have you ever seen it, The Beautiful Mind? Oh, okay.
It was a long time ago, but yeah, I mean, he was very smart. Yeah.
Yeah, but then he started seeing these but to me, even when I saw the movie, I was like, I wonder if they were ghosts. Like, what if they were ghosts? But he didn't have the proper people around him to tell him, hey, well, they're probably like spirits that are here, you know, try to talk to him, find out why, or what is it like? Yeah, like, what are they exactly here for? And I guess and even that, see, like, when I mean, so we're talking about this, might as well jump all in, right? Like, even when I started having, you know, more sensitive, like, kind of connection with the spirit world, or like hearing, see, like, even that, when I was going through a thing of hearing voices, like, that would be like, right, you would probably label someone schizophrenic, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's one of the, like, you know, questions we ask as a therapist, like, do you hear things that aren't there? Do you see things that aren't there? You know,
Yeah.
But again, when I ask those, I sometimes try it, like if it's a teenager, let's say, I'll try and separate them from their parents,
Mm,
because I think when they're around their parents, they're gonna be like, no. But usually if I get them by themselves, they'll start opening up about what they're actually hearing or experiencing. And a lot of times too, a lot of people don't get this, but we have like I guess, like, I don't know if you'll call it like an inner monologue or dialogue or something. Like, we talk to ourselves. Everybody does it. We think about stuff, but sometimes I think some people confuse that as there's another voice in my head. It's like it's just you.
yeah.
But
Um,
yeah.
so your belief, or is like, what's your personal belief on that? Do you feel it's just that, or do you believe in the spirits and all that?
I mean, I think there are people who can tap into hearing something, divine or outside of us. I haven't personally experienced that. I will say, I feel like you mentioned before, like Tesla being given stuff. I've had that. I feel like things just kind of fly to me, different insights, ideas, and things like that, but it'll feel like my own. But
Yeah.
I know internally, like I could have never thought of that, or I would have never had that knowledge, like I was given it. So with that, it's funny you mentioned that, because literally this morning I was thinking about how a lot of people with like ADHD and stuff, they think that they're scatterbrained or they can't get stuff done, or even people with bipolar disorder, they have all these great ideas and then they can't get to them. And I was like thinking to myself, like, what makes me different from that? Because I get all this stuff. And I guess maybe it's just like I talked about yesterday, my way of coping. Like I know how to like shut it down or how to take a break from it. And I don't really know how to walk people through that, but
Mm,
maybe it's through other things like breath work and meditation, that it's just doing it on its own for me and I don't have to think too much about it. But I mean, there has been one time where it was like so many ideas coming at once. And I did feel kind of like people with bipolar disorder who are like, I have all these ideas and I don't know how to start. It
mm,
was like there was one week, it was just all these good ideas and I was buying stuff and it like triggered me because I was like, am I going through like bipolar disorder now? Like, what is this? But I guess it was just, I don't know, like if you are into the spiritual, maybe like the moon phase or something, maybe some creative energy was coming through. And I just had like an open vessel or door that it was just kind of coming to me. But then I decided, like, I make the decision. I don't have to do all of this just because it's coming to me. And so I think that was a thing. I was really overwhelmed at that time. And I was thinking, I was like, maybe I'm supposed to share it with people. Like maybe, like I mentioned to you, the songs that were coming in my dream or something, like maybe I give those lyrics to somebody and they kind of play around with music, or maybe it finishes their song, but I don't necessarily need to follow through with that, you know, stuff like that.
no, yeah, 100%. So like, yeah, because there's a lot like
I know I just
so,
went on like a
no,
tangent
no,
there.
perfect, perfect. No, I'm glad you did. But like, see, for me, so I have experienced that, right?
Yeah.
Like hearing things and all that, and it has like throughout my life. But like when my brother passed and I was really sensitive to everything. On which, like, I think I mentioned in the other interview that I interviewed Josh, a friend of mine. I mentioned to him how there's this guy that has a whole YouTube channel on grief, right? And
Mhm.
not just grief, but near death experiences. And all those people, like, just crazy things happen with that, right? Like the near death experiences with grief.
So
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so when that happened for me, that's why everything opened up, right? When my brother passed away, because already being spiritual, it's almost like I didn't take no for an answer. Like
Yeah.
it was like
Mhm.
I wanted to communicate with my brother. Nothing was gonna stop me, like
Mm,
nothing. And I
yeah.
think he the same way. He was like, he needed to communicate with me, like that everything was good and this and that, and things were
Mhm.
gonna, like, they played out how they like I shared a story once about how when I was in the Marines and I went through boot camp, like
Mhm.
nobody got guests, right? Because that's when they're like hard, like they're trying to make it as close to being in war, because that's normally how it would go, right? You had to at least finish your boot camp basic training, and then in case boom, you had to get shipped off to war, right? Like, but
Mhm.
that was like, that's the basics, right? Or I don't know if back then, like, World War and World War One, World War Two. I don't know if they, because you still need your a class like for the job you're gonna have in the military. But I think during that, like the drafts and everything, it was just like probably just basic training, and then boom, for you to get shipped off. But no one get, that's when they're really trying to harden you up, like break you down to build you back up, all that stuff. So no one gets guessed. And it was funny because my brother went to visit me, and it was like, I mean, it was a great feeling, because there are like, it's crazy. Like, it's only like 3 months long, but like they told us in the beginning, a week's gonna feel like a month's gonna feel like, it just feels like forever, because you're just, it's constant, it's nonstop, right? Like, there's no telling. You don't, like, at the end it was funny because they're like, didn't we at least give you eight hours of sleep a day? And they're like, hell no. I think I slept, if I was lucky, 4 hours a night, but all that stuff, like, they're really like just boom, 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 like nonstop for the 3 months, right? So, but my brother went to see me, right? And I was like, like, how does this guy even make these things happen? Like, and after they, like, it was kind of bad, but it was good. Everyone was like looking at me like, what the hell? How the hell did you get a visitor in the middle of our training? We're in the middle of the training up there, like in Camp Pendleton, with, it's a known military base, and he just shows up, and everyone's like, what the hell? Like, so it's like that. See, like, to me, it was like that kind of mentality. Like, when he went to the spirit world, like, if anyone could find a way to come back or see me, like, it was him. But in the same me, right? So I felt like I was very connected. All that to say, so during that time too, I was very blessed to have people around me. Like, I had a friend that was a medium that, like, I had known for years, and I didn't find out she was a medium till a month before my brother passed away. And when, I mean, I'm supposed to hopefully interview her at some point. She was going to be one of my first interviews, and then we rescheduled like 6 times. And after that, I haven't spoken with her. But that one, because I can verify, I think people are always skeptical. Like Houdini, like, he's one of the most famous magicians, and he made it like a quest to disprove all these mediums. So even that, like, that was one of the things, even my brother, the one that passed away, was that, like, or him or my dad would always try to show, like, oh, well, Houdini disproved that mediums don't exist, or this and that, but having already experienced spiritual thing, I was already like, I mean, it's cool if that makes you feel better, you could tell me that, all you want, but how do you, when you've already experienced things, like, you already experienced it, like, there's nothing you could tell me, like. So anyways, by chance, I had my medium friend, and I know I'm going all over the place, but so by chance, I had my medium friend, and so I told her when this was happening to me, because she proved it, right? So I could tell, like, I could vouch for her 1,000,000%, right? That, like, she was helping me out through that whole process. Like, even, I went to my brother's house, and she was like, oh, there's this thing there, things that are so impossible. It's like, I would never doubt her, ever, ever, ever. Like, you know what I mean? So at least for me, I know, like, it's real, right? And so I told her, I was like, I'm starting to hear, like, something's going on. Like, I'm really sad. Like, I'm hearing the voices, this and that, male voices, female voices, like, all these different, like, spirits, because that's what they say, right? Like, it's like, once they see, oh, this person hears us, then yeah, they're like trying to, like, the movie Ghost. That's literally, have you
I
ever
haven't
seen the
seen
movie
that.
Ghost? You haven't seen Ghost?
No, I'll have to check it out now.
Yeah, at least watch that one, that Ghost,
Yeah.
because it deals with the spiritual, right? But how at first it's funny. It's like I don't know, Whoopi Goldberg. You know who she is or no?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh really? No, I don't know. Like, I know she was really famous back then, and then I guess she got famous again with The View, right? Like, so everyone.
Oh right. Yeah. Huh.
Okay. Yeah. So in it's like, once the ghosts see that she's able to communicate, then they're all lined up, right?
Yeah.
And I in my interview with Aquarius Maximus, she talks about herself experiencing that, so she's sensitive to that. But when my friend, I told her, and she taught me, like, it's almost like a business. You could shut it down. You could tell them, I don't want to hear you. Like, she explained to me how
really good.
Like, she tells because she's connected, like, oh, there's people in other states that she's helped connect, like, hey, your husband that passed away has a message for you, or this or that, or different things, right? So and then it's verified. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's real. Like they'll tell her, the spirits will tell her, tell them there's this here, or tell them there's that there, and they'll, there's no way she could know. She's in another state, this and that, and then, and then so that's how it's verified. I mean, that's kind of how it happened with me as well. But I asked her, like, how? See, I was lucky that I had her to ask at the moment that started happening to me. So she's like, you could just close it up like a store. Like, hey, like, I guess the agreement she has is she told them, if I see you, I'm not going to help you. So you could talk to me and I'll help you. Whatever, go communicate with your relative, whoever. But if I see you, I'm not going to help you. And so I was able to shut it down thanks to her walking me through that, right? Like saying like, hey, like, nah, because it does. It sounds like I would be laying down in bed and all of a sudden start hearing stuff. And it's like, oh, hell no. Like, it sounds like you're going crazy. Like to yourself, it sounds like you're going crazy. Like, how are you going to sleep all of a sudden someone's over your top telling you like, hey, this, hey, that. And you're like, so, all that to say, I don't even know how we got into that, but, or how I got into that whole thing about, oh, well, we're talking about schizophrenia. That's okay.
Yeah. But I think, like you said, she mentioned just taking that into your own hands, that you can shut things down. So like, even like I mentioned about the thoughts being overwhelming, or like I was being given stuff, like I didn't need all that. So just figuring out how to kind of cut it out.
And so that's the thing. See, we have that power. Like, see, I experienced it now. I understand that. But for someone that all of a sudden, they feel like, oh, I'm schizophrenic, I'm losing. I could even see how that could drive someone to suicide, to like really lose their mind. Especially
with the stigma attached to it, that like maybe you can't work, or maybe you have to go to a hospital and stay there the rest of your life. Like there's all these labels and like associations with having something like that.
Yeah, 100%. And like, there was even another incident that happened to me. And I prayed. I was like, take it away. And it stopped. But that's the same. It felt like I was losing my mind, I think me and you have talked about like alternate realities and all that, right? So
a little bit, yeah.
yeah. So that's what it was. Like I was in the shower, and see, water, like if you see any kind of rituals or ceremonies throughout all these cultures, there's always water, or not all of them, but water is involved a lot, right? Because water is like, we come to this earth through water. When we're in the woman's womb and we come out, we're in water. So if you think about it, like water literally is a portal. It's a portal that brings us into this existence.
Yeah.
So that's how sacred water is, if people don't get it. So, I was in the shower, getting soaked in water. And all of a sudden, it's like my brain just started seeing all these alternate realities. And it was so overwhelming. I dropped to my face and I was like, take it away. And it went away. And I was like, I don't want that. Like, it was so heavy, but I have that connection that I feel if I pray for, see, I believe that's the thing is I have a very strong conviction that when I pray, they're going to listen to me. Not always immediately, not always like, boom, because it did take a little bit, but it was like, then it went away. You know what I mean? So, but the way we're so conditioned now, it's like even that, I know in therapy, you wouldn't, by the rule book, you wouldn't be allowed to share that kind of thing with your patient.
That like I've experienced that or something.
To talk about stuff like that, like you really.
The reason I'm careful about what I share because I don't want it to be used against me. But so with something like that, not necessarily, but I might, like, if somebody asked me, have you experienced something like that? I might just like vaguely be like, yeah, I have, but not go into detail about like, oh, I hear voices, or I am talk to spirit or whatever, I might not say all that, but I might kind of get them to think about it differently, or learn more information as to what it is, like you even said you heard like a female voice and a male voice, like getting specifics like that, like what are you hearing? And then I think it's only really detrimental or like, concerning if it's like stuff of like to cause harm to someone else. Like if I was hearing, hey, go to the neighbor and I don't know, stab them or something, that kind of stuff. And then that's when I would definitely get more into like, okay, we need to treat for schizophrenia or psychosis or something, and I need to really stick by the book because this is really, this could kind of overlap and get more serious, but with something else that's, like hearing the voice of God or something, and maybe it's something more soothing, or it empowers the person. I don't think anything's wrong there,
Yeah, no, and see, I think that, like, for spiritual people, like, I think I really feel we're all spiritual, but obviously there's different levels, right?
Yeah.
Those who, like, I've tried to explain that to people. It's just, if you don't believe, I think I made a video because I had that kind of experience, like, with my dad, right? He's like the biggest skeptic ever, right, in the world. Like, he's like I said, he would show me, like, oh, look, Houdini disproved, like, mediums and stuff. Like, because Houdini made it his quest, like, to disprove. I don't know what happened to him. I think he wanted one to communicate or put him in contact with his mother that had passed away, and it was a complete, it was a fraud. Like, that person was a fraud. So then he was like, okay, they're all frauds. But I guess he would expose. But I guess back then, I forgot what year he was alive in, but it was like a huge thing. I guess not, I don't know if it was just in the US, but I guess the medium thing was like, it was huge. It would be on the newspaper, like, oh, this medium and this and that. Like, it was crazy. It must have been before, like, the Christianity wave hit, because see, like, I think a lot of people think, like, oh, it was just like a huge thing since the beginning of the US. But I guess, see, I didn't even realize it. I think Christianity, like, it really hit, like, the way we see it today, or now, not so much, maybe, I don't know. But because they wouldn't have accepted mediums, right? Like, they would have gone against them, like, full force, supposedly, like, according, how the government, like, they always put, like, every person running for president will let you know, like, even Trump, right? He used, like, the Christian thing, and he asked some to say, like, one passage from the Bible, like, he was like, oh yeah, that one. You know what I mean? So they use it in a political sense, right? Like, every single president, right? I think Biden used the Catholicism, but he probably really is. I don't know if he really is a practicing Catholic or what, right? But they all use the religion. So back then, I guess mediums were a big hit, like, across the US. But then, like, Houdini came and just started, like, knocking them all down. Like, look at this one's a fraud. I'm gonna show you how they did this. Or even ones that would move items, right? He would go see that they were moving items, and he would show. I think one lady, he literally put her in a box where she couldn't move her arms or anything. And once he did that, she couldn't move objects, and she was cussing them out and saying all these things. So it was crazy. See, so
it's interesting too, because if you think about it, I mean, if somebody is a medium and they're restricted like that, I mean, then they're not open probably to even get that kind of communication. They're like already struggling for what, it's uncomfortable.
yeah, exactly. You're right. Yeah.
So,
who knows? Who knows, right? It could be like just not having, I mean, think about it. Look at Tai Chi and all this. It's
you need that movement. Like, you need something. You need to, I mean, you can't be closed up. That's why they say, like, open your heart, like, you can't be closed. Otherwise, so.
But I mean, who knows? Maybe those were really frauds, right? But see, like I said, to me, like, I wouldn't even vouch for someone if I thought, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I've experienced that. Well, and even, it just depends the culture you're around. Like, once you're around a more spiritual culture, like, you'll see things, right? But where was I going with all that? About lost my train of thought. The mediums, I don't know. I lost my train of thought.
Well, you were talking about your dad, how he's like a skeptic and stuff like that, and he was talking about Houdini, who was disproving stuff.
Oh yeah. So I think because I made a video about it. So him being a skeptic, man, I forgot what I was gonna say, because I know, like, because there was like, when we moved into the house where when I started high school, like, there was a little, I even made a video about that. I put, like, little ghost girl, right? So there was a little girl that we would see, and it was only me and him. And then even this guy that was building a patio, he ended up seeing her. So it wasn't just me, my dad, like this, but other people couldn't see her in the house. Like, my mom never saw her, this and that. So he was sensitive to all this, but
Mhm.
still he was like, just the biggest skeptic, right? And so finally, like, I don't know, a few months ago, I had that conversation with him about, like, what would it take for you to believe? Like, let's say you could ask, hey, if you show me this, I'll believe.
Mhm.
I was like, what would it take? What's the minimum thing that they could show you so you'll believe? And he was like, nothing. I was like, what? Like,
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, I don't like. Then, and my mind was blown. I was like, wow, then if I would have had that conversation with him years before, but see, I guess I felt like even me, it was part of me that I had matured enough to be calm and be like, okay, well, think about it and be like, okay, well, what would it take? Why are you such a skeptic? Like, what's the minimum thing because that's how it happened for me. I asked for something, they showed me, and I was like, that's it. I'm never going to doubt again. Just with one thing that they showed me that was so unbelievable that I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I can't doubt. Like, I'd be insane to doubt. Like,
Mhm.
just how people look at spiritual people, like, oh, this person is crazy. That's how I would be. Like, I would tell people I don't have the luxury to not believe in God, because that's what I thought. I would like communicate. I asked God some stuff. He showed me, and
Mhm.
then that was it. I was like, okay, then that's it. Like, I'd be a fool, right? Like, to not believe. So, but when I asked him this, he was like, nothing. Like, there's nothing they could show me to believe. So I was like, well, then you're never gonna be shown. Like, what's like? It didn't make. I was like, why did I waste all these years trying to understand you or this and that? So that's really how I feel it is. Like, if you're not open to it, then why would they show you?
Mhm.
Like, like, let's say you're,
Right.
at your job, and, let's say you were supposed to train someone to be a therapist. And the whole time they're just talking about, well, I don't believe in this, I don't believe in that. Why would you even waste your time? Like,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Like, this person's already showing you interest that they're never going to care about
Mhm.
helping people. It's kind of just a paycheck. Like, they have no interest. So why are you
Yeah.
caring if you actually care? Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think my belief in that too is almost just like planting the seed, but also not kind of spinning your wheels to the point that you're frustrated.
Yeah.
So I feel like, you can impart your wisdom, and if somebody is not gonna take it, then you just hope that maybe at a later time that seed gets watered, and then it's like, oh wow, now all of this makes sense because I spoke with them at this time, and now I spoke with this person, and then boom, it just clicks. So you never know. So I feel like I wouldn't like necessarily say not to take that time, but it's just when you recognize yourself getting heated about it, that's when you back off. Like, that's my capacity, and I did what I could. And I think my personal belief is that we're each here to help each other enlighten in some way. But again, everybody is like you talked about maturity, like everybody's growing at a different pace. It's not to say that they won't get there, but maybe they won't get there in this lifetime, you know?
And that's something. Okay. No. Because we talked about it in the last, you mentioned, like, and I understand, but I was like, I guess trying to not go too much into it because, like, the last episode, we are trying to be more relatable, but how, like you said, like, we called certain things.
Yeah.
I think that's a hard one for people to grasp, right? Like, even that, like I told you, like, wait, I don't know. Or I think I talked about it. I don't know if I talked about it with you, but like when my brother passed away, they
Mhm.
showed me that this is how it was written. This is how it was going to be.
Yeah.
So it was, but I mean, they really showed me. So if not, how could my brain grasp like the concept of how could something like this, so traumatic, so heavy, like we agree to it? Or how could this be written into our script? How could it doesn't make sense, but
Does it now to you? Or
of
do
course,
you have
yeah.
to?
No, I
Yeah.
was shown. Like, I'm telling
Yeah.
you, when I
Okay.
tell you, see, and that's the hard part. Like, I wish I could show you what I've seen, but
Mhm.
like, we each have our journey. Like, if I show people like all the things I've been shown and seen, like, that's why I'm not surprised. Anything someone could tell me, like, I'm really not gonna look at you like you're crazy. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Unless, see, I noticed this. I'll touch on this briefly. Like, I
Mhm.
noticed, when I was growing up, I noticed I was already spiritually aware, but probably not as much. But yeah, I was already having probably premonition, stuff like that.
Mhm.
it was a huge like outbreak of like, I think the capital of the United States of like methamphetamines was like a few counties over, right? Like 2 counties over. So it wasn't far, but even where I live, it was like, I saw tons of friends, and you would just see them like, you couldn't even recognize them no more, getting hooked on meth. But what I noticed is they were very sensitive to the spirit world. But it was almost like bad entities would, but like some of them would still have premonitions. So I was blown away. So I was like, whoa, like here's this person on meth. Half the other stuff they're saying, because I remember this friend showed up once, and I was like, I felt bad because I wanted to tell him like, hey, I can't be around you, because even his energy didn't feel right, right? I remember there was a palm tree like across the street, and he was like, look, you see that? Like he said a little kid or something was popping out of the palm, like this high palm tree.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, oh yeah, I saw him. Because they like, you don't want to say, because I was saying no, oh no, I don't see him. No, yeah, right there, right there. So, oh yeah, okay, I see him now, right? But it's crazy because I noticed some of them will be having premonitions legit. Like I could vouch that some premonitions some of these people had came true. So it was, I was blown away that this drug, well, it's like almost like, but see, this is a man-made drug, right? As opposed to you hear people with their experiences with ayahuasca and mushrooms and peyote, which are natural from the earth, right?
Plant medicine.
Go ahead.
Or just like plant medicine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but it comes, I mean, that's what we eat, like that's what keeps us alive. Like it's
right.
We're obviously connected to it. And when we, like my friend, the experience he shared with mushrooms, like it blew me away, because he's not someone that we've really had any spiritual conversations, but everything he's saying, it was just like, it touches on everything that a spiritual experience is, right? Like to say that, to feel connected, to get these amazing revelations of like how nothing, all the material stuff, none of that stuff's gonna matter when we go, and all the things that what was that?
The ego deaths.
Exactly. That a mushroom showed them. You know what I mean? Like all that knowledge came from eating a mushroom. How can you say, oh, that's like some kind of drug, or it's this hallucinogen just made your mind trip? Okay, and have some in-depth, profound knowledge given to you like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, stuff like that. So, drugs, plant medicine, even meditation, you're reaching an altered state of consciousness. And so that's where you can like tap into those other things, which is why I actually like preach to my patients. I'll like slide it in there, but if they're very religious, I won't say anything, but I'm like, you should meditate. And if they don't know how to, I try and teach them. I like let them know how I do it, because I think everybody should have access to that. So whether you feel like shrooms is like too risky for you, or you don't want to go try a drug or ayahuasca or anything like that, then meditation, like you can access this similar states through meditation.
Yeah, 100%. And how do you feel? I think because that's people's fear, right? Oh, what if I have a bad trip? That was always my fear, right? Like I don't know, acid's man-made, but I think this whole documentaries on, I guess there was this guy, I don't know if he was a doctor, and he's the one that got everybody like doing acid, and I think he had all these profound things shown to him through acid. But I mean, I never attempted to take that, because I seen people have bad trips, that even people that supposedly like never came back. Like it was crazy when I was in high school, there was a kid, I guess whose older brother or something had done acid, and he was just gone. He was like, that's it, his brain was gone, and they were trying to sue the drug dealer. Like it was crazy. I don't know how that works, if you could or what, but it was like they were trying to sue the guy that sold him. Oh, I guess you could, right? The guy that sold him the acid for messing up like, yeah, he was gone. Like so that kind of stuff made me reluctant to do that. So I don't even know if I would ever try acid or something like that. But I would, but see, like someone like Jimi Hendrix, Santana, amazing musicians. And it was like when they, they did a lot of stuff on acid and somehow tapped into that,
I was just going to mention, like, I know you said something before about like the fine line between being a genius, or I get, what was the other word you
Insanity,
used?
genius, and
Insanity,
insanity.
right? So I guess it's the same with reaching an altered state of consciousness. Like sometimes maybe you do are kind of on that edge too. So you could tap into the more like genius part where you're making music and all that, or you tap into a different part. So, and who's to say? I mean, I'm sure there's much more than we know about, but I think you run that risk either way.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. Like, have you experienced? Okay, I know you mentioned Dolores Cannon in the last, So
Yeah.
which was the book again that you've read?
I've read, I think there's one called The Three Waves of Volunteers in the New Earth. So that's the one I've read. And then The Custodians. The Custodians is about aliens.
Oh, okay.
And like abductions and things like that.
Okay. And see, she's respected. Like, no one looks at her like she's crazy.
Well, so she was a therapist, and she would put her
Oh.
patients into a trance
Mm.
and reach into like their subconscious to ask like these deeper questions. So things we don't remember. So like even that dream, we talked about before about where I had what I believe to be like an encounter from like an extraterrestrial. There's probably things in that dream that if I was put into a trance, I could remember more clearly. Maybe I would actually see the being and what they looked like exactly. But from my memory, it almost, appeared to be like a taller human. But that's from like my consciousness here in like a 3D. But if I was in my subconscious, maybe I would actually explain something that might sound horrifying. But in my waking state, that's just what I know. So she reached into these other layers of people to get all this information. And a lot of them were recalling alien abductions that they had
Oh,
never
wow.
told anybody about and weren't even aware of for themselves. And then they were talking about different going out into like from like different planets. They were from different areas. They're not from Earth.
Mm.
So it was a whole lot of stuff. And then the other book, The Three Waves of Volunteers, talked about how these waves of people started coming in because there was a call from the Earth, like Gaia, saying that, it needed people to come in and start kind of paving a new way and like pretty much like enlighten people through different acts of service or work. To get us all to pretty much move out of like this more 3D into a 5D reality.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting about that, because even there was one woman that I had met, she was a shaman from Colombia, right? And when I met her, like I took them to the ceremony, to a native ceremony, but
Mm-hmm.
I had to go pick them up and then drive, and then so after I had to go take them back, right? So I had all these hours to spend, and at that moment I had never met anyone that all the crazy things that have happened to me, that no one I could really talk to. Anything I was asking her, what about this? Or I seen a vision of this, or she was just answering everything, boom, 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 without skipping a beat. Yeah, so I was like a kid in a candy store, right? I was just like picking her brain, like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And so one thing she told me is that she said how, like how you mentioned all these beings coming, that she said, like, I know, like, see, if we talk about it from a physical standpoint, we could say, oh, like autism, right? There's all these autistic kids because all the stuff.
Well, so they're a lot of them are actually part of the wave.
Okay, well, that's what she told me. Exactly. And she, I doubt she ever read are they all in English or books, or because she's mostly like
there's probably a translation. I think her books have been translated, I think, into like 100 different languages.
Well, I'll ask her one day out of curiosity, but I don't think like she read. It's like me. Sometimes I'll have seen like where I'll say something that, I heard about that or something. So I think, we experience similar things, like people that are tapped in, or whatever.
And these ideas too are also like across the board, just like when you hear something in the Bible and it's also mentioned in the Quran or somewhere. Exactly. Like these are all the idea is not new. Yeah. It's just you're hearing it from different perspectives, from different people, and you're hearing it in a different context.
Yeah. And so one of the things she said about like autistic kids and kids with, like Down syndrome, all this stuff,
Yeah.
or not,
Right.
is that, yeah, they're coming to balance things out, because them, if you look at them, really, they don't have a lot of the malice or nothing, or none of it that regular people have. They're just like, their brain acts different, or they're, they don't have all those things. They're not thinking of how to get over on somebody, or how to this or
Right.
that, like,
And the funny thing with that too, just kind of linking it to the mental health, is that with autism, it's almost like, when they come to therapy, a parent or a teacher or something is like, almost like fix it, like make them kind of conform to like our standards. But really, I mean, they're kind of our teacher. We should be learning from them.
And what's like, for example, if you can give an example of like, what's something that you've seen that has struck you and you like learn from them, like?
It's a good question. I think the ways, I'll use Down syndrome. So Down syndrome, I was drawn to people with Down syndrome for some reason. When I was in like high school, I started reading books on it for no apparent reason. Maybe it was a spiritual thing and I just wasn't aware of it at the time, but it was fascinating to me, and I'd never really met anybody with Down syndrome. And then after I graduated college, I went and actually worked in a home where it was adults with Down syndrome. It was like a whole campus of them. And I just really appreciated the way that they appreciated their life, like small things, the phrase like stop and smell the roses, like they were literally doing that. And here I am like trying to rush them, like, let's go. But they're like taking their time, they're doing like, and I like look at that, I'm like, that's what we should be doing. Like we're on this like urgency thing, like go, get it done, be productive. But like they're here stopping to actually look at what there is. They are human beings. They're like we're trying to do, but they're being, yeah.
Yeah, no, and see, like when I was younger and I would see them, I remember thinking like, it was humbling, right? It was like, if you ever think like, oh, this or that, nagging about any little thing, like, and you see, like, you weren't born with that, right? Because most people will be like, oh, like, I wouldn't want to be born like that, right? But you see them, I don't know, it was humbling to me. But now I see them, like, I guess, understanding what I think I understand about the spirit whole thing about like this whole journey is that they chose to come like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I look at it like, wow, like, man, brave, brave, because I don't
really
know, like,
brave. Yeah.
who knows? Maybe in a past life I did, or you did, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be why we were kind of drawn to them in some way. Maybe it's something that resonates for us because maybe we walked that path before.
Yeah. Or maybe or I haven't, but I look at it like, yeah, like if they chose that, then I definitely, and I see the same thing. Like when I see someone, sometimes you'll see someone in a wheelchair, this and that. And again, like there's the humbling thing, like, okay, like, don't be complaining about this and that. But there's also the, now, like spiritually, it'd be like if they chose that, I wonder why they chose that. Like, what is it? Like, I don't know. There's some kind of journey there.
Yeah, I think, with everything, like you're choosing it to learn something. And so it's really ultimately up to them. And so two people in a wheelchair or two people with Down syndrome are not learning the same thing. Maybe one is learning unconditional love because people may show you love despite how you look. Somebody else might be learning how strong they are because maybe they're going to get bullied, so it just, but they chose it to learn something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
also to teach us,
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's kind of what the the woman that was a shaman, that is a shaman, said. It was like, they're here to teach, they're here to balance it out, like. And it made perfect sense to me, like when she told me. I mean, she even went deep into some other stuff about, in all the, like, I don't know if you're familiar, the Popol Vuh is like they call it like the Mayan Bible, right?
Funny you mentioned, I was about to talk about the Mayans. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. So even they had like in the Bible, I mean, in their Bible, the Popol Vuh, it talks about how when we were created, like, you know, they were trying to make different versions of men, but, you know, like, you know, men, women, like humans, right? And so one of the versions, like, it couldn't procreate and this and that, right? So it was like this, that. But see, like, indigenous people have a strong, especially from, you know, I guess the South America and all this, or you know, where the Mayans were from and all that, strong connection with corn, right? Corn is very important, right? You'll see it even in the drawings, I mean, I don't think they're called hieroglyphs, right? I don't know if that's more the Egyptian thing or that's here, but you know, you see it like in the carvings, or, you know. And so she said how one day in the future they would see that, because they said that the gods or whoever created also took corn to make, it says that in this book, like corn to mix it with the DNA of the human, and, you know, so they were making the right, like, human being. And she said that one day in the future they would find that out, that we do have like whatever genetic thing. Yeah. So, no, all those things, that's why, like, all these things that they call myths and all that, that's what blows my mind. Like, we're like, all these other cultures, aside from like what we know now as modern religions, everything else is a myth, mythology, this, that.
Right.
But they just call this, like, it's funny how everything else became mythology. But, you know, I like that she said that it's like everything will come to light, right? Like that saying was, well, I don't know. No, that's a different saying, but, you know, like that it was going to come to light, you know, so many things that were going to happen, right? Go ahead. Were you going to say something there?
Oh, about the Mayans. It's funny because I was going to mention it. I didn't know if it was like too esoteric, but with Dolores Cannon, at the end of her book about the 3 waves of volunteers in the New Earth, it was fascinating. She talked about the Mayans and how, I guess there was a tribe, or maybe it was the whole culture itself, but that they figured out a way. This is really out there.
No, go ahead.
They figured out a way to take the whole culture, that whole like Mayan civilization at that time, and leave this dimension and go elsewhere. So they like so that's why they say like the Mayans are gone, because like they took themselves and like they figured something out and they left. This is the theory in the book. And there's like other beings like passing this information along about it. So when we're talking about the new earth and how to shift our level of consciousness, that's ultimately what the new earth is if we can get as many people enlightened, we're going to shift out of this like very violent and like negative 3D reality and move into a different dimension.
No, and I agree.
Yeah.
But like, it's because there's so many Mayan people still here, because I know
well, from like lineage, yeah, like,
yeah, but it's like there's so many even movies that have shown that, like, there's that story that the Mayans disappeared, but I don't know, they're still here. So I don't know. Maybe it was
they could also be the time travelers, right? People who are coming back to help us propel forward.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's because there's just a lot of like all through Mexico, even, you know, there's just a lot. But I do believe that happened in some capacity, right? Like, you know, they see, like, that's one thing that I kind of believe even more about, how they see that there's an inner earth, right? So like, you went out there, so I'm gonna go even more out there. Like, actually more in there, right? Because inner earth, they say how, well, because there was even this pilot for the military that said he saw this stuff and he went into this huge hole, like up north in, I don't know, Antarctica or the North Pole or somewhere. And then after he changed his story, I think, and then on his deathbed, he said that it was all true. So see, yeah, that's the thing, is like, but they've said that there's people that have said that about journey like inside the earth, and that there's like this whole civilization. It almost looks like they have their own sun in there and all this stuff, which would make sense because it's like this huge, I mean, I don't know, they teach us that the crust and the mantle and it's all lava, or I don't know, but that's one of the things that they've talked about, that there's the inner earth, right? Yeah. You never heard about that? Or?
I haven't. No, I'm gonna have to look into it now.
No, there's books, and, you know, there's so many books about it. I mean, even the ocean, right? I remember I took an oceanography class, and that's the first time I heard. I think the professor said, like, I think only like 5% of the ocean had been explored.
Yeah.
So like what's no, and then I mean it keeps coming out, oh, here's this ruins, or we found, you know, ruins that are like 75,000 years old, and there's this and there's that, right? So yeah, I feel like reading now I want to go back and read these books because it's been a while about certain things that I want to brush up on. But I was going to ask you about, okay, so even reading those books, right, like Dolores Cannon, which a lot of people seem to admire her and believe what she's saying, right? So in all her books or things that you know of, has she said anything about these entities? Because even with near-death experiences, like I've heard so many interviews of near-death experience, and they tend to kind of talk about similar things like what Dolores Cannon says about like the afterlife, right? Or that like us volunteering, coming back, like we choose it, all this different stuff. So do they ever talk about these bad entities? Because I want to tie that into the mental health thing as well. Like, has she ever mentioned anything about these bad entities?
I've only listened to 2 of her books, but the one about the custodians, which is about extraterrestrial beings and stuff, she mentions in her interviews in those, because she's getting all of her information from her patients being in a subconscious or altered state where they're being channeled through from like another being. And so there at some points, if you listen to it on audio, it's funny because you get like the voice change, the voiceover and stuff. So it's like another being will come through and like choose to go ahead and speak for whoever. So if I was in a trance and I'm not speaking, I guess, the way as clearly as they wanted me to, then their voice would come through and speak to Dolores Cannon herself. So she mentioned a few times, you know, that people, when they're explaining alien abductions, that they have a bad experience, that there's probing and it's scary, or they're seeing something very horrifying or whatever. And so she talks about it. Now they do say that everything that they're doing is actually for our benefit, that it's almost like we're a garden and they are like trying to nourish us, and make sure that everything's going well and that we don't like kill ourselves, or, you know, as a whole unit, we don't like kill off the human race, basically. But they did say that there was a subset of, like, they have all these different, I'm sure you've heard it, like, what is it, Arcturian and Lemurian or something, like they have all these different races, but there was one, I'm not sure if it's the Greys or a different one, but there was one that I guess did have different intentions. And so what was passed along in this book, and that I did mention, I think in like the first video we did, was that you can always say that you do not give consent. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel like you've been abducted, or you feel like you're about to be, you can always use your free will to say, I'm not going to be a part of this.
Interesting. I've heard that before. That's why, like, that's I've heard about that, like saying those words, like I don't give consent. No, but because I was going to talk about how, like, you know, because that's one of, like, you know, like I feel like they put me through now I feel like I know they put me through tests, even learning here, right? And you know, I know people might not understand that, like, to think, how can something communicate with you, like, if you don't see it, if you don't, something like that. But it's almost like, I think of a dog, right? Like how they've even trained dogs to, they could find cancer in someone, right? Like they could, like, I don't know how, but they sense it, they smell it, I don't know what. No words spoken, no.
Even through like eye contact, like with my dog, we have a really good bond, and there's times like I feel like he's like talking to me, like I can see it, I'm like, no. or I'll look at, I'll give him a look and he knows what it means and he'll go off, you know, and we have no verb, like they don't understand the way we do, so there's definitely something.
Yeah, so even, I mean, just that, seeing, like, okay, so there's communication without words. Like, it's obvious with dogs. If anyone ever doubts, it's obvious with dogs. So think about beings that are more advanced, right? Or that we consider more advanced. To not, like, to really, for us, really not, we wouldn't understand how advanced they are, that they could communicate with us. Like, we don't see them, but they're there, right? And so that's one of the things, too, that I went through once. Like I went through a very, like all these tests, and like, you know, they would give me my little thing when, you know, while I was finding feathers, which are like, to me, it was a rare feather, right? I had never found, because the red-tailed hawk is a very spiritual animal. There's all these things like written about the red-tailed hawk. And so one time I remember I was up hiking and all this stuff, and I was having all these thoughts, negative stuff, right?
Yeah.
Negative stuff that had no reason. And so at that moment, I realized, because see, I had already passed the test of knowing when it's you, when you're putting stuff in your head, that voice, you know, the just negative
Inner
stuff.
critic,
Yeah. So I had already passed that. But then this time I acknowledged, I stopped, and I was like, wait a second, this isn't me. Something's messing with me. And right as I said that, I looked down and boom, there was a red-tailed hawk feather, you know? So it was like, if I passed that test, see, so I've experienced that. I feel that, right? I don't know, like how, you know, like obviously, like how you really can't talk to people about that. Maybe that would be a form of schizophrenia, where someone is really getting harassed by some entity, but I've never really heard. I mean, religion, that's why with religion, I would be able to relate to that. I think only religions have been, you know, by chance. When I was going through certain things, I remember I was working at this job, and this Christian guy who we shared a spiritual experience, and I didn't even know this guy. He gave me this book. It was like spiritual warfare. It was like this Christian, hardcore Christian book, but he gave it to me, and it made sense to me, because it was talking about that, like when things are messing with you, and how to, the same, like to call them, like, you know, to not give them consent in a way, or fight them and this and that. So it was all a book on that, spiritual warfare, the things we can't see, right? And so I've experienced that. So I don't know how to like talk about that really, because you know, it's a touchy subject. Like, what, you don't want to say the wrong thing. What if you give advice spiritually, and someone that probably would have benefited from, like, you know, doing the regular stuff, like going to get prescription drugs, or going to, you know, psychiatric help, you know, but I've experienced that. I guess I'll just say that, like, I don't know if you've read about that, because like I know you said you've never really experienced the hearing stuff.
No, I haven't. But I will say, you know, I've experienced, I guess, I don't know if I explained it to somebody, and they said that I was being like a channel. I've experienced that, where, like, I mean, even with my patients, this might sound weird, but I have it a lot with my patients, that I'll get into a moment where I'm just talking and talking, and all of a sudden when I stop, I realize it wasn't me. Like something else was like using me to get a message across to them. You know, like sometimes I'll like, there's certain metaphors or things that I'll say across the board, you know, to a lot of people throughout my day. Like sometimes I'll find a good metaphor in the morning, and I'll use it in like a lot of my sessions if it's relatable. Well, there was one day, like, it was like a very random metaphor, and I was like, I don't know where that came from, but like, it wasn't something I've ever used. I was like, it was good, but I don't. So I know I was like being, like, I don't want to say used, but I guess it was a message getting across. So I've had that. And sometimes I can feel it now. I can feel when I'm in it, because it doesn't feel weird, but it almost is. There's some, I don't even know how to describe it. It just, I can almost feel it now when it's happening. I don't know how else to work with it. I guess I'm still in like the early stages of that, of like when maybe I could intentionally do it. But I did notice one time, I mentioned this actually just yesterday to somebody, that I had a guy come in, and he actually had schizophrenia. And when I looked through his chart, which I don't normally do before meeting someone, because I try to like have an open mind before looking at stuff. But for some reason this day, I looked at his chart, and I saw all this stuff, and I was like, this is going to be a difficult one. Like, it looks like this is like a lot of ingrained stuff, and like, I don't know what to do. So I meditated before he came in. And when I was sitting there, I think about halfway through the session, I just started talking, and I don't know, to this day, I don't know what I was saying. And when I stopped myself, when I stopped talking, I realized what was happening. And I asked him, I said, did any of that make sense? And he said, all the fish were caught in the net.
Oh, wow.
So to this day, I have no idea what I said, which is probably like almost unethical in a way, but like he got the message and I saw him after that. And I just like paid very close attention because I was like, I don't want to like hinder any like progress, like especially if I don't know what I'm saying, but I trust myself enough to know that I'm not saying anything weird, but it was just that was the first time where I felt like it was like out of my control. I think that was one of the first times I noticed that happening to me. But I also think like I said, called it in because I meditated right before. So it was almost like I opened up that doorway, and I'd also acknowledged to myself I didn't know how to work with him, So it was almost like I think something was like, well, here, we'll help you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, and I understand 100% what you're saying. I mean, you want to talk. I don't want to see. I always like.
No, go
I
ahead.
want to make sure
Yeah,
you don't
go
get
ahead.
in trouble because, like, you see, for people, I don't know if they'll understand. How do you feel about that? Like, do you think people are open enough to like understand these things now? Like, about.
Like channeling or
I mean, it's all tied in, right?
spiritual.
Hmm?
Yeah. Do you mean about channeling or about something else? Like spirit? Like,
Everything. See, I understand what you're saying, but I'm like, if they hear you say that, like, are they gonna be like, oh, like,
right. Yeah. So I don't let my patients know. Like I never told that guy, like, I don't know what just happened, because
but I
like
mean, should
I'm
I
not
leave it
gonna.
in the interview? Like, you feel comfortable?
Yeah, no, that's fine. But like I said, that was the first time that I was aware of it happening. So it kind of like threw me off. I'm sure it happened before then, and I just went with it and maybe thought like, oh, I'm really on it today, like inspired or something. But that was the first time I knew, because it was almost like I blacked out. It was like a moment of like, I don't know what I was saying, but like it was helpful. And so then other times, I think I started to try to practice more awareness of like, what am I saying? Are these really my thoughts? Are these really my words? And then I kind of picked up, I guess, I would say it's probably just a strong intuition. There's some people, like there was one person, it was the first time I was seeing her. So I'm supposed to go through a list of questions for the first time, but something told me not to. And for some reason, I like had this thought of a cat. And so I was like, this is so weird. I don't know why. So I just decided to ask her. I was like, do you have a cat? And she broke down crying and said her cat had died that morning.
Wow.
Yeah. So, she was here for a different reason, but because of that happening on the day she was coming in, I was like, well, let's just talk about your cat. So like, I almost could have done worse by just asking her question, and her never really talking about her cat.
So something just told you to ask that.
Something literally told me, put it away. Like, and I was like, this is weird. And I just like put it away. And then it was like an image in my head of a cat. And I was like, and I was like, do I ask her? Like, this is weird. And I was like, do you have a cat? She was like, yeah. And then just started crying. And I was like, oh my goodness. And she was like, it died that morning. So we were talking about it, but stuff like that. And there's other times, I'm just like in the flow of talking about something and something else will come up, like a woman. I mentioned another like metaphor and I was like, oh, well, if you want to wear lipstick, and I just threw this out there, and she's an older woman. And she started laughing really hard, and she had her like husband in here, and she was like, oh my gosh, she's like, I was just telling him this morning, if I want to wear lipstick, I'm going to wear lipstick.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, well, and he looked at me and I was like, you got to let her wear the lipstick. Yeah.
Wow.
So stuff like that, I think it's just being guided, or their messages that like somebody is helping me to like get this out there, to empower them, to help them, because maybe it's not really the depression. Maybe she just wants to wear lipstick and that's going to make her feel better, and that's not the case for everything. But I think that's, I've also noticed too, I think some people, it's easier to do that with them because they're already open. And I don't mean like on a spiritual level. I think maybe they don't have a guard or a wall up, or they already feel like they can trust me. So then it allows for that process. But there's other people, because there's been times in a session where I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And I'm like asking for it. I'm like, give it to me, like now, and it's not coming. And I think it's because that other person is too guarded, or they don't think I can. So
Yeah. It's funny because I was gonna ask you something,
Mhm.
or I was gonna bring something up, and then I started needing to cough, and I couldn't. No, but I felt like in a spiritual sense, like, are they
Yeah.
telling me to spit it out, or are they saying
Mhm.
like, don't talk about that? See, like,
Mm.
no, because see, I'm like, no, right now, everything you were saying, I was like, yeah, I was blown away. Like,
Yeah.
so obviously you have a strong, like, medium connection, right? I don't know if you would call
I
yourself.
noticed it started. I think it's starting to get that way. I don't think I won't say I was always that way, but it's starting to get that way. And maybe because I am more open to stuff. I mean, who else is listening to like a 5 hour? I think it was the 13-hour book that I was listening to of like aliens. You know what I mean? Like who else is really? I mean, I know there are people doing it, but so I think just kind of you being open, then you're helping other things to come in. But again, going back to the other thing about really being clear on your intentions, like
Mm,
I know that my purpose is to serve in whatever capacity that may be, that's for the highest good of the other person and myself. But I also know that like there's certain things I'm not going to be a part of. So like the alien stuff, I've said that too. I don't want to see them for what they are, because I do think that I would get too scared,
mm.
you know. So maybe that's why too I don't always have those kind of encounters, I guess, but maybe they're working through me a different way.
Yeah, most definitely. No, and I was like, oh, maybe that's like, I just looked at the time. You have to go, right?
I guess the patient didn't come, so they haven't told me. So that usually I get like a little message pop up that somebody's here, but they haven't. So this patient isn't here.
Oh, okay. So I mean,
So
you
it was divine timing, I guess, that somebody wanted us to keep talking.
oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So you want to just keep going then?
Yeah. So I have about 30 more minutes, but go ahead.
Okay. Let me just clear my throat real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was crazy. I just started, it was like
Yeah.
something just got really like itchy and
Mm.
what the hell?
Wow.
Okay. Think I'm better now.
Mhm.
Okay, so I don't know if I want to talk like about this because it's kind of heavy, but it goes perfectly with the mental health, right?
Mhm.
Um, since we kind of like, yeah, like we're gonna, but it's fine. I know everything happens how it's supposed to, right? Like what
Mhm.
we end up talking about, like how you said, like things being channeled. Like I always feel
Mhm.
that, right? Like I actually pray before I do these interviews. I'll say that too. Like let me ask like the right stuff, or let me this and that, right? Like I'll do it. And maybe I don't remember every time, but I do for the most part, right? Like because I
Mhm.
do feel that that someone, even something, maybe I felt like we were jumping all over the place, but maybe someone's gonna get something out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Mhm.
but one thing, for example, like I mean, I might as well talk about it. I hope or well, if I'm not supposed to talk about it, maybe it'll make me choke again or something, or start coughing. I'm feeling it out. So like one thing was like when my brother passed away, right? For example, like it was crazy. First of all, like he was in the second story, right? He was in the second story, so the room, it was a suicide, since
Mhm.
we were talking about that. So
Yeah.
when I went after, like, I don't know, what, like a week later or what, like we went to go get stuff or whatever. And I was walking up the steps, and it was like the air was so thick. It was like if I was pushing through something. It was like that whole thing walking up the steps. It was just like this. I had to like pull almost like the strong, like the other day when I was riding my bike in the mountains, like it was like double the workout because the wind was so strong. I was like, oh my God. I was going like where usually a good pace, I was like at a snail's pace because the wind was just blowing on me. So that's how I felt. It was like I was pulling, there was this thick energy, like I felt like even though it wasn't you visibly there, I felt it, right?
Mhm.
All the energy. So when I got there were things there that made me feel like there was something in there with them, right?
Mhm.
Like something egged them on even to do it, right? Like
Mhm.
you know, and I guess he, you know, he had been drinking too, so that didn't help, right? See, like that's one of the things that, especially since I've been more connected spiritually, it's almost like I'm afraid to be under any influence really of stuff,
Right.
because now that I understand that, I like to be always aware and in control.
Yep.
You know, and I know that, honey, I don't care how strong someone feels or this or that. When you drink or this and that, it's like you do become more susceptible, you know, unless maybe you really are that good at just, you know, your career like drunk or like you're really that good. But I feel that even with me, like I felt like you know, if I drink or this and that, then I'm more open to whatever wants to come in and whisper this or whisper that. You know, I even experienced that. I remember like it was a weird time once. There was a friend I was, you know, I was out with drinking, and all of a sudden, I don't know, I turned at them and I seen like, I don't know, their face looked different. I was just drinking. I wasn't under no kind of influence, but then it was like if something was telling me to like, I don't know, like they were, it was just that, like if this is a good friend and I'm looking at them like something's telling me this person's not good. Like they're gonna try to do something to me or something, right? But it was a negative thing. See, so see, like you, when you're in with patients and everything, see something good is coming to try to help them. And that I experience, like, you know, all the time when I'm in my right mind. You know, I mean, it's been, like I said, it's been so long, but I remember things like, you know, when you drink or this and that. Like I remember even that, like there was this guy that was doing tattoos, you know, and he was like, you know, because I guess he was gonna go to prison, so he was doing tattoos that would cost like over $1,000 for like, you know, a couple, like $100, $150 for like, you know, so like there was all these people at a friend's house getting tattoos from him. I even got some tattoos from him and everything. But one day I go and he just like flipped. Like I knew he was someone that would do meth and all that, right? So I don't know if that, but he flipped, right? Almost like something in his head was telling him like, yeah, he kind of like, so I kind of, you know, I don't know. It was like there was this tension there. And then I just, you know, like I was just ready. Like if he, but it was almost like that, like something was telling him stuff, you know? And it was crazy. No, like, okay, I'll just share this. So when I got a tattoo, because I had forgotten. When I even got a tattoo from him, we were in this house and it was a 2-story house. And I was getting this tattoo done. And then his wife or girlfriend, I don't know who, she was upstairs. And she comes flying downstairs and she just, oh, there's something here, something there. And she just runs and she leaves. And I was like, and he looks at me and he's like, I don't think something wants you to get this tattoo. And it's like, oh, well, I mean, all of my tattoos, I mean, all of my tattoos have spiritual meaning, but something, I don't know what she saw upstairs or what there was there. I don't know if it was their energy, you know, like that, like, you know, like him and his, I don't know if she did stuff too. Like I told you, like, that's why I've noticed people that did stuff, they were very susceptible, like they could see the spirit world. Like it's like that veil kind of dropped for them, but it was usually negative entities, you know what I mean? So I mean, I bring all that up just to say like even that, right? Like with suicide, like, see, I feel that when the suicide, even though someone might say, oh, it's part of my plan, part of this and that, I feel like it is some entities that whisper in those moments, you know, like there is things that are in those moments whispering, like, do it. You know what I mean? That's my take on it from my experiences, you know?
I'm sure it is, but I guess maybe thinking too about the free will that led up to that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you said, like even with substance or alcohol use, like that somebody took that path and then boom, that's when they were met with that thing, you know?
Yeah. And I think usually because like, you're not, most likely if you're under you're drinking this, you're smoking, you're not gonna, in that final moment, like you're not gonna be able to stop and think rationally. Like it's just, so that's where for me, it's like it gives that, whatever, if something is whispering, it gives that the opportunity to come in and
really latch on.
Latch on and say things, you know. I mean, that's a whole nother, I mean, that goes deep because I've seen, you know, like I've seen these things. See, and that's what I think. I think not everyone is meant to see these things. because if you did, like some of these things, like it's like out of a horror movie, right? Like some of the things I've seen. And I don't always see, so it's good. Like I wouldn't want to see them. Like who would want to see this stuff, right? So see, I have that whole other like outlook on mental illness too. Like sometimes I feel like when it comes to that, when it gets really dark, when people are in that really dark space, and the ones that often do try to kill themselves or take that leap, sometimes I feel like it's that. See, I look at it like it is. That's why it's funny. All these things that came into my life, I think happened for a reason, like that. Like the Christian guy giving me a book about spiritual warfare, that it's literally like a war, right? Like when we're not, that's why you have, even in the Bible, it has that thing, be sober, be vigilant. For the devil is like a roaring lion. Your devil, the adversary, is like a roaring lion, you know, walking, waiting to see who he can devour, right? And you know, like the word devil, I think all it means is adversary. Like I think that's all the word. That's why it's funny they used it right there. But the word devil, I think the origins of it just means adversary, not the horned creature or something like that. It's just like, it means adversary. So whatever this adversary is, these negative energies or whatever. So that phrase, it's even there, right? Like someone wrote it. Someone took the time to write that in this book. Like, be sober, be vigilant.
Right.
Because there's something out there trying to get you. When you dumb down your wits, right? When you give into that lower vibration, there's something trying to get you. You know what I mean? So whatever, blah, blah, blah. Well, because I didn't really know where I was going with that, but just to say, like, see, that's another take on me. I don't even know if I don't feel comfortable saying that, because at the same time, like, I don't know, like, if people will be able to understand that, like, you know, from a spiritual, I'm talking like 100% from a spiritual point of view. Like I would, like, let's say, okay, people did understand what I'm talking about. That's my advice that I would give. From all my experience of being connected spiritually, I would say it matters. Like, because you never know when it's going to hit. Like even that depression, you know, sometimes it comes out of nowhere. It's so random. You're in a good mood. Then all of a sudden your whole mood changes. You're depressed. You're suicidal, all these things. And that's what I've been shown, right? I was shown that a long time ago, like, and different stages of my life, that sometimes there are things that we don't see, you know? And I could understand why not everybody would be able to see that, because it's some scary stuff to look at, you know what I mean? And so that's what I would say, be aware. Like, but of course, not everyone could be sober. Like, it's not an easy road, even that, being sober, being all the time, like, in your right mind.
Well, I mean, even if people aren't practicing sobriety, they can still have an intention behind why they're doing what they're doing. You know, so like if, you know, somebody's having a drink, is it to celebrate or is it because they're pissed off, you know? And those are two different vibrations.
That's true. Yeah, maybe that makes a huge difference. I never thought about that.
Well, that my dad actually used to tell me that, like, drink because you're happy, because you're celebrating. Don't drink because you're upset.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, because that's one of the reasons too that I was always scared to like try acid or anything like that, because I was like, what if when I take it, you know, because I had heard of these bad trips and this and that. So I was like, what if when I take it, I start thinking negative and I create that, like a whole bad trip. So I was always, you know, worried about that. So that's interesting that you said that.
Well, I think too, for anything, you know, even taking medication for, you know, depression or something, maybe somebody's taking the pill and they're like, this doesn't work, and they're taking it, or they're taking it and it's like, great, another pill, you know, versus, okay, this is when I take this is going to help me get through my day. When I take this, I'm going to feel better. When I take this, I'm going to take other steps to feel better, you know? So like, really, what is the intention behind everything we do?
Yeah. I mean, but what about the pills where it says side effects include, like,
well, not everything is for us, right?
Yeah.
I've had that too. I was on medication one time and it threw me for a loop. I was like, I am not taking that. Yeah.
No, I experienced that, and just by chance, it was crazy. See, that's why I do believe all this. There's the good spirits, the negative spirits, you know, angels, whatever, however you want to call them, angels, higher beings looking out for us. But that's how I see it. It is like a war. I don't experience that as much now because I think I'm more in a higher vibration more of the time, right? as opposed to when I was younger and I drank and this and partied, got in a fight. There was all this stuff happening. So I was more susceptible to the negative stuff as well, right? But damn, what was I gonna say? What were you talking about?
I said I had taken medication before and it didn't work very well.
Yeah.
It like I was like I was walking to a train stop to go to work, and this was when I was in Chicago, and I was walking and I saw a big boulder or a rock, almost like you would see probably where you're out, like, I don't know, what is the Grand Canyon or something, like a big rock. And this, I mean, that's not normal walking down the street. So I was like, what is that? Like, why is that here? And I thought maybe something was being knocked down, and I'm looking around like, am I in a construction site? And I didn't know it. And as I got closer, it ended up being a plastic bag blowing in the wind.
What?
So my perception was off that bad. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was bad. And then that same day, I remember I was calling into work because of that. I was on my way to work and I called in and I was like, something's wrong. And like, I tried to explain it. And I think I'd already called in too many times at that point because I was living a different kind of life. So they were not having it. They were like, you need to get in here. And I was like, okay. And I got on the train and I was trying to really think to myself, like, what is it I'm feeling? Like, I was trying to check in with myself. And I was like, if I had to describe how I feel, what would I say? And this is all in my head. And I was like, I feel like a bending metal spoon. And I've never thought or felt that before. So I was like, something's wrong. I was like, I got to get off this.
Well, what was it that you were taking? It was
It was called naltrexone. I don't know if you've heard of that. I was taking it for an impulse control disorder, but which is kind of almost like a compulsion or something. But what naltrexone is actually for is to help people stop drinking.
Oh.
Yeah. So like
Wow.
during that time, like food didn't taste good. What it does is I forgot the term used for it, but it's basically like if I had been an alcoholic and they gave me naltrexone, well, if I take a sip of vodka, it's going to make me sick pretty instantly.
Oh.
So that then I start associating drinking with being sick, and then I don't want to do it anymore. So that's what that pill is actually for. But it like messed me up at that time, and I only took it maybe 3 or 4 days, and I was like, I'm done with this.
Wow. No, and so now I remember what I was gonna say, because it was something similar. It was like when I was working, at this job, and it was like a warehouse, and sometimes I get home and I'd sit on the couch and just fall asleep, and there's all this dust. So I started breaking out. Like I had never had, but it was like the acne was so bad, it was like itching, like you just want to like, so I had to go to the doctor for that. And then they prescribed me these pills. It was a huge can like that, right? And I don't know, I probably got into like half the bottle or something. Or yeah, bottle, I said can, the bottle, right? I had probably gotten like halfway through the bottle. And I had been feeling like super depressed, like a really bad, like, almost like with the anxiety medicine, but that's more understandable. But this was for acne, like, and so I was talking to a friend like in another state, like like they live in Colorado, or something. And I was telling them like, yeah, I feel really weird. I'm taking, like, I don't know. Oh, and they asked me, are you taking like, I was like, yeah, I'm taking these pills for acne. Oh, my cousin took the same and they were like all suicidal or whatever. I was like, what? Like, yeah. So I started taking them and I was like, that was only halfway through. If I would have finished the whole bottle by the time I was like, but bad though. It had me in a really weird like fog, but it just tripped me out because it was for acne. Like, why would acne medication make you want to like freaking kill yourself,
Right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's crazy. Yeah, it's just being careful with that stuff. Well, I was in a spiritual sense, like they talk about that too, how the word, like, I don't know, that's something about the pharmaceutical word comes from some other old word that means something, but it's almost like I don't know, they tied it into something spiritual. I would have to look it up. Someone was saying something about that. I think it was actually like a Christian preacher was talking about how the word pharmaceutical comes from this or that, and how how it's,
I'm gonna look it up now, but
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, no,
Oh my goodness.
because
Yeah, but what were you gonna say though? Do you
no,
know what
no,
it
well,
was?
because everything, it's almost like tied into it. Almost sound like they almost made it sound like it is in a formal way, like a spell kind of. You know how they made it sound like how. Well, see, I think that's where the whole like witches and stuff.
On here it says in Greek, it's from pharmakeutikos, I don't know, but it says it means preparer of drugs or poisoner.
Ah,
Poisoner, yeah.
poisoner.
Mhm.
That's amazing, right?
Yeah, wow.
That the word that they used to give everybody,
Yeah.
the pharmaceutical
I was about
company.
to say too, I didn't want to like say this because you know of my link to it, but I guess also I'm just a therapist, so I don't really mess with the drugs. But um, uh, when you mentioned the acne medication giving you the suicidal thoughts, like you almost wonder what if some of these things that we are taking for something else are probing a different thing so that we'll have to go seek help for and get another pill. You see what I'm saying? Like, what if it's all like a domino effect? Give them this for their acne, so then they feel bad, and then they have to go see a psychiatrist to go get a pill to fix that, you know?
I
And then
mean,
sign them up for therapy so they really feel bad, you know? And it just is like a whole thing of like just not feeling good.
yeah. No,
But
I mean,
when it was
go ahead.
just acne.
Yeah. Like I heard someone say something about like they set up, for example, like I mean, this is unrelated, but in the same way, it's kind of like it was true though. It stood out to me. It was like they said about how Coca-Cola, there's like it's almost like there's no reason that should even exist. Like it's useless. It's bad for you, like really bad.
So bad.
Yeah, like they've shown where they pour it on like a battery or car battery, and it's like
Yeah.
acid.
I think it like it'll clean like your drains and stuff. Like it'll like, I don't remember. It was something about that too. Like imagine what it's doing the inside of your stomach. Like, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so see, there's so many things out there, but yet they push it. Like I think even that I they did this whole documentary how like one of the number one killers in Mexico is Coca-Cola. Like people drink it over there so much, it's like everyone's getting diabetes and this and that. But that's like the one of the number one killers, like straight Coca-Cola, because everyone's obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I
So,
even like it.
yeah.
It's good.
Oh wow. Well, I haven't drank.
I've really reduced how much I drink it, but every now and then I just got to get a sip.
Oh wow. Yeah. See, I think I just got you. I haven't drank soda in so long.
Yeah.
I got used to it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, coffee too. My thing was coffee, but then when I got the
Mine's still
anxiety,
coffee.
huh?
Yeah. I said mine is still coffee.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
Uh,
like I might go drink some right now, but I stopped for a whole year when I got the anxiety because it does make your anxiety worse, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so I had to stop. It forced me to, but I felt like that was all part of something. Like, you know how they say it's not being done to you, it's being done for you. Like you've heard that, right? Like that. Yeah. So that's how I felt. Like, okay, spiritually. Well, I think it made me healthier because I don't know, like it's obvious to me. Like if I drink coffee or you drink a lot of coffee, like I'll start feeling less healthy when it's a lot of coffee, right? Like it just not maybe just a cup a day or something like that, but I've noticed it. But sometimes, like, when you drink a cup a day, then you want more. Like you kind of build a tolerance,
Yep.
So I would, yeah. So I would feel it, and especially during the pandemic thing, and I didn't drink coffee for a year, so I was pretty healthy, Like
Yeah.
I was just everything was more, like I guess natural or whatever. Like so I was feeling healthy. So that was my theory. I feel like they did that for me for like on purpose, and then so I was able to be pretty healthy through the whole thing. So,
Good.
yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? You think this conversation we touched on a lot of mental health things or not really?
I think it was definitely more like spiritual and esoteric, but we did come back to mental health many times. We were trying to tie it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because it's hard. It's like, that's why I wanted to do the last episode we did. I'm really grateful that you did it with me and everything, because I do get it. Like, I think the majority of people like are gonna relate more to that. I mean, I obviously don't know everybody. I don't know how everyone's spiritual, level, right, of what they know. So I would like to have more like this kind of conversation feels more natural for me, like to be able to talk freely about everything, right? Like, it feels, I would like for people to be able to understand this, but like I said, or maybe it's for me, it's you want to talk about like mental health, like that was a big thing for me, to be in a household where nobody believes, kind of thing, so all that stuff really affected me. It took me a long time to finally to break out of that, right, to be able to talk about this. So I think I still have some of those traumas that, see, when I'm talking about stuff, like I don't want to go too deep to where people don't understand and nobody gets anything out of it. Like, I'd rather people, could follow along and they're like, oh, wow, I could relate to that. But maybe they could. I don't know. I guess, who knows? Maybe we were just channeling through this whole thing, and whatever had to come out, came out.
Yes, it seemed like there were many messages in there. I mean, we talked about sobriety even, like, who knows, right?
Yeah, no, well, that'd be a huge, it was even that, right? Like, for me, it was really hard to be like to get, because I used to like drinking, but I wouldn't drink like I wasn't a heavy. I would just, when I did drink, I drank. It was like, yeah. So when I would go, I would drink to the point of and then after I got a few, actually, see, I didn't even, in a way, like getting a few DUIs helped me.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it took, like.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, I just had the strongest. I did actually, because I was, without the DUIs, I had gone sober for a while, but then, whatever. Like, I think the DUIs were kind of that extra push. Like, when you're spending all that money and all this and that, you're like, yeah, this isn't worth it. So I just learned to be sober, but it was hard at first, because it's like, I guess even just that, feeling restricted, like, oh, damn, I really can't do this, because if I get caught, then the consequence, and I got those before Uber had even came out, I think. So
Yeah.
like, there was no, like, taxi cabs were way too expensive. Like, nobody, nobody really called taxi cabs. So it was like before Uber came out. Like, if I was still drinking right now, then I would probably drink a lot. So, because I could just call an Uber, like,
Right. Yeah.
an Uber. So I guess I'm glad. But just to tie that in, like, I guess it really helped me, definitely, being sober, especially when you start experiencing things. So I guess maybe we could start wrapping it up with that, and you could add whatever you want to add as well. Like, being sober definitely helps when you're opening up spiritually, because that could be the difference. For me, it might have been the difference between thinking, oh shoot, I'm really crazy, or understanding, like, wait a second, I'm 100% sober, I'm in my right state of mind, like, what's really going on, and then looking into it and finding people that have gone through the same thing, because then once I found the spiritual, and even on YouTube and everything, you'll find so many spiritual people that you're not crazy. So it's being able to know, like, okay, like, I'm not crazy, like, this is really happening, this happened to all these other people, you know what I mean, and being sober enough to recognize that, I think, is a huge thing. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I mean, I think that's big too. And also, just like we were talking about with the pharmaceuticals and how those are so big and widespread, and like it's this idea to just take a pill and get better right away or something. But I mean, even with alcohol too, they have the name spirits, right? Wine and spirits, right? So they're trying to like advertise almost like that this, go in this direction, but that's not the spirit you actually want, unless your intention behind it is different. I guess in some cultures, or even in religion, they're using wine, during service and stuff like that. So again, but it's a different intention, it's to bring them closer to God or something, right? And it's just a sip. But I think it all just comes with the intention. What is the intention behind it? Is it ceremonial? Is it because you're celebrating, or is it because you're really upset? Because at that point, you need to step away from the bottle or the glass, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, and it's funny like that you mentioned that like about in the Bible, because that would be my one thing. Like, because there's all these people with NDEs that say they saw Jesus and this and that. Like, I never personally saw Jesus. Like, when I would have visions, like when I was younger, I thought it was straight God, right? Like, or how natives say the Great Spirit, because that's what it looked like this ancient spirit, right? And this is the entity that would show me these different things, right? And so but one thing, like, let's say there, like Jesus is there, right? Like, because I don't know, like, I could say like, but if Jesus was there, I would have to ask about the wine, because there's this parable about, or this story about Jesus turned the water to wine.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I just never even agreed with that. I was like, everything else sounds good. Like, oh wow, everything is awesome. Like the whole Bible, like nothing bothers me, but that passage, like, why in the hell are you trying to get everybody drunk? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, because how bad, like, so many bad things like that happen with alcohol. Like, I mean, everything, right? Like, that's why it's crazy. Even alcohol, it's just all the chaos it brings. Domestic violence, people killing, like, at one point they warned us, like in the military, it was like it wasn't just drinking and driving. It was like people would die, like even just trying to drive home for the holidays or whatever. Like, you go on leave, and people trying to drive across the country, they're stationed here trying to drive, and they'll get in car wrecks. So they were saying like car wrecks were a huge killer of military people, right? But I don't think that was really, they didn't specify. I don't think it was drinking, but it could be. But we know how many people die from drinking. So it's just amazing that's so yeah, that thing in the Bible always bothered, like nothing else bothers me from it but that passage. Like, Jesus turned water to wine. Like, why the hell did he? I would ask that, like, if I met him, why the hell did you do that? I don't get it,
Who knows? Maybe it was just like how we say not everything is literal. Maybe it was just something relatable that they thought would be relatable, or that people would kind of be like, oh wow, about, like, what if it was he turned the wine into juice? People might be like, whatever. But like, if it was like wine, then they're like, oh yeah, I love it, because maybe back then that's what people were really trying to take in. And so I don't know.
No, but see, that makes it sound more like it was a marketing tool. Like, yeah, hey, Jesus turned water. Yeah. Hey, Jesus turned water to wine. Oh, no way. I love this Jesus. Where
exactly.
Is he? Like,
I mean, I won't go there. I won't touch that one.
Yeah. No, that's me. I'll talk about it. Like I study the Bible so much, like, so but that, like, it bothered me. I was like, why is he trying to make everyone drunks and stuff like that, but that's funny. Yeah. So no, that's a good note. I guess we could end it there, unless there's anything else you want to talk about. No? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Man, I feel like we really hopped all over the place, but it was still an honor, and I appreciate it, and we'll do another one. There was something else I wanted to talk with you about, but I'll remember after, because I was thinking when we were talking, I was like, oh, we could do a whole episode about that, but I completely forgot. So when it comes back to me, I'll let you know.
No worries. All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I want to feel this way forever.